Sorry if you can hear my kids in the background.
Good evening and welcome. You're watching the Zone Blitz by NFL Female. I am Sharona, the official NFL fan reporter for NFL Female. You can follow me on Twitter at Sports by Sharona. We have a great show tonight. We're going to be talking about the Chicago Bears, the Minnesota Vikings, and fantasy football. We have two of our favorite people in the world with us tonight. As usual, I'm going to go ahead and throw it to my girl Sonja, my co-host, who reps the Detroit Lions. Sonja, how are you?
I am doing great, you guys. I am Sonja. I am the official fan reporter for the Detroit Lions, like Sharona said, for NFL Female. And, of course, I am excited, as always, to be here on Tuesdays chatting and talking some football. And today, like Sharona alluded to, we've got some fun stuff to talk about. Fantasy, which I think would be the greatest thing to talk about right now. And, of course, we're going to kind of do a little truncated version of the NFC North since we have 3 of the 4 teams represented.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. So why don't we start with you? Tell us hi and where you're from.
Me.
Yes, you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay. So I am Liz Loza, also known as the Fantasy Football Girl, and I am NFL Female's official fantasy football expert. Dana said guru, but I think that was maybe a little bit too complimentary. So yeah, I have a site, thefantasyfootballgirl.com. I've worked with Scout Fantasy this past season, and I have a podcast called the X's and Y's Podcast with John Evans on iTunes.
Oh, cool. Well, I am excited to talk to you in just a little bit about fantasy stuff. And then we have, representing her Minnesota Vikings, Miss Virlisa Lane. How are you, Boo?
Good. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
Hey, Virlisa.
Tilt your computer down just a little, or your camera down just a little. There
you go.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I sound so nasally. I have a cold, and
Oh, bless your heart.
I can't stay warm, so I'm just like, oh. I got my cough drops in my mouth, and
You look beautiful. I love the hat.
I know. That's a great hat.
Yeah.
I haven't done my hair in 2 days, you guys. So
it's serious.
Well, I'm cold too, and it's been allergy around here, and so I've had the sniffles and the sneezes and all of that stuff. So I can't sympathize with the cold, but I understand the symptoms.
Yes. But thanks for having me. I'm so sorry I was late getting on because, as you know, I don't know how to work my PC or whatever computer or gadget thing.
I was struggling with Facebook like an hour ago because I'm never there, and if I am, I'm just liking or replying. I absolutely, and this is on my phone, the phone app, I absolutely could not figure out how to post something, just standalone post, and I was like, okay, I feel dumb now.
I was just about to have my daughter come in and say, help me, I can't get it to work, but I figured it out.
Well, we're very happy to have you. Sorry that you're not feeling good, but you definitely stay on your grind, and you're here tonight with us. So let's talk some fantasy football. Well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about the Bears. I want to ask Liz just real quick about, I read an interesting article about Brandon Marshall, the trade that sent Brandon Marshall to the Jets. The general gist was that the Bears, there was a Bears source for the writer that was referenced in the article, saying that the trade was essentially because of his contract. Are you buying that or not?
Well, I don't know if it was so much about his contract, but I will say that his appearance on the Inside the NFL show last season did reportedly cause a little bit of locker room friction because he wasn't working out on the same schedule as the rest of the team, and he got hurt, and some people said that maybe he wasn't conditioning as well as he should because he was basically playing and then flying to New York from Chicago to record the show. And, as someone, I believe his wife is pregnant with twins, and so he's thinking about the end of his career and transitioning, and maybe he had thought, I think maybe he was putting the cart before the horse because really he's a football player, right? And that's what he was under contract to do. It doesn't surprise me that he's in New York, which is minutes away.
Right.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
Right. So, and I think there was a new regime and there's a new GM and a new head coach, and they want to put their stamp on this era of Bears football. And so out with the old, in with the new. I think they would have dealt Jay Cutler if his contract hadn't been so weighty.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with what you said. And they also, I didn't know this, I learned this from that article, they instituted a new policy. They're not allowing any more players to do the media thing. That's off limits now, a no now. I can completely understand why that might have been an issue.
I think so too. I mean, you're letting people double dip, and it's just not an even playing field. Not that the NFL ever is. I mean, that's why some would argue J.J. Watt was the MVP of 2014, but he's not going to win that because he's not a quarterback. So, you know, there's a lot of politics, but I feel like, you know, this draft class that we're going to see, I know we're going to talk rookies a little bit later, and I'm excited about one of the prospects that could potentially fill Brandon Marshall's shoes. So it's not all lost in Chicago. And with Jay Cutler under center, my hopes aren't particularly high anyway.
It's so sad. All eyes will be on Jay Cutler in 2015. And it does look like you mentioned it. No, a team would be crazy to trade for his contract. He's not, unless he agrees to redo it, and there's been seemingly no desire to do that. It's hard to knock guys who don't want to redo their deals because, my goodness, you know, contracts aren't guaranteed. You take the money when you can get it. And I'm not knocking Jay Cutler by any means. The one more thing, just real quick about the Brandon Marshall thing. I can understand too if, you know, Brandon Marshall not only doing this media gig, the Inside the NFL thing, was also apparently being very vocal in the locker room. And I don't have any doubt believing that one of those arguments was one of his teammates saying, listen, you're not here putting in the work. Don't tell us what to do. Don't tell us why we're not performing. You're not even here. You know. I mean, you know how the locker room works.
Right? Like, Jay's, that's his guy. That's his friend. He brought him into Chicago. And if Jay's playing the way Jay was playing and not, you know, wholly executing Mark Trestman's system, whether people bought into it or not, he wasn't executing. I mean, Jimmy Clausen put up better numbers than Jay Cutler. That's a problem. And I would say that that's a mental problem. And the fact that Brandon Marshall was absent and also not getting into Jay's ear, because he's probably one of the few people who could, caused additional friction. And, you know, I also think that the whole locker room was a mess because Mark Trestman, as genius of an offensive mind as he may be, he just doesn't have the sort of charisma to commandeer an entire team. And so I think while Baltimore is going to ascend with him, you know, figuring out the plays, you need somebody who's almost like an epic figure, like Belichick. You know what I mean? That's the guy everybody capitulates to. You need a commander. You need a Napoleon guiding that ship. I know it sounds really dramatic, but Mark Trestman.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, but on the flip side of that, you get Jim Harbaugh and what happened to him in San Francisco. And I don't know, the NFL's a crazy thing, and when you have so many, you know how it is, you have so many egos involved in
and they're male egos.
I was going to say, I'm glad you said it. Oh, thank you, Liz. I wanted to say it. It was on the tip of my mouth. I was like, no, I completely agree. Yeah. All that testosterone in one room. Whew.
Yeah.
Smell the pheromones now.
I don't know which one is more, if it is testosterone or estrogen.
So, what do you think? Okay, well, let's talk some fantasy football, and then before you get out of here, we'll ask you what you think the Bears are going to do in the draft. All right, so fantasy football. Liz, you really are the guru there. Dana was right. Who do you like this year? Who do you don't like? Who's hot? Who's not?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of it will be determined next week at the draft. So there's quite a bit of speculation at the moment. I mean, guys that I like, guys that I don't like. DeMarco Murray, I think, has big bust potential. Leaving Dallas, going to Philadelphia. He's now going to be in a timeshare theoretically with Ryan Matthews, Chris Polk, and Darren Sproles. He also, if you watch tape from last season, was run into the ground by Dallas and did not finish the season with the same explosiveness that he did at the beginning of the season. So I don't think he's going to be the number one fantasy back again next year, and he's currently being drafted, if you look at early mocks, in the first round. So I get the ranking. I'm a little gun-shy. Don't think I want to take him. So LaShawn McCoy, on the other hand, is dropping to the end of the first round, and that's somebody that, you know, we all suffer a little bit from recency bias, whatever just happened. We have short memories. I think LaShawn McCoy is a great value at the end of your first round. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I think Matt Forte in PPR leagues might go down, but in standard scoring leagues will stay the same. I don't think he's going to be catching as much passes, but I do think he's going to be running a bunch. Wide receivers, Odell Beckham Jr. is being drafted super high.
I've seen him go number 1 overall.
In Dynasty especially, but yeah, in some NFL 10s, people are taking him number 1. And what's interesting about that, I mean, I get it. He's an ascendant talent. Michael Strahan a couple of weeks ago called him the most gifted athlete currently taking breath.
Wow. High praise.
No hyperbole there.
I totally get it. And I love him in Ben McAdoo's system, and I love it even more that Victor Cruz is running on that knee, running on hard surfaces, and he's projecting to come back by the fall from the patella injury and his patella tendon injury. So there's a lot of room there. So I like Odell Beckham, but I also feel like I can't pay that much for him. You know, like I don't know if I'm going to get him because he costs so much to draft. And then if you're looking for mid, I think Brandon Marshall's a loser in terms of winner and loser free agency. He's someone that's not quite so hot. I do think he's going to have a dip in value. I'm kind of going all over the place here. Carlos Hyde.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
You're good.
Carlos Hyde has a lot of potential in San Francisco with Frank Gore now in Indianapolis. There's really no competition. Reggie Bush is there, but Reggie Bush couldn't stay on the field. As you well know, Sonja, last year he started 9 of 16 games. Which, if
I drafted him. I was very upset.
Yeah.
he's a shell of his former self, and he's only going to be there for change of pace touches anyway. So Carlos Hyde, he has that bell cow potential. He's, I don't know, like 6 feet, 230 pounds. He's a nice big back. He could be nasty. RB2 right now with RB1 upside. And I think if we want to go back to Detroit, I like Joique Bell a lot as a number 2, like a solid RB2. You can get him in the end of the second round, and I think that's a great value. I mean, if you're right now, my first 2 rounds, if I'm going running back, and I'm picking at the end, I'm thinking like C.J. Anderson or Jeremy Hill or Joique Bell. Like those are great RB2 options, and I think C.J. Anderson could fall to the second round, depending on the draft.
Nowhere on this list.
Oh, AP! I said the end of the first round. AP is my number 1 pick. If you
I was about to say, I still think he's going to be number 1. Yeah.
Everyone's talking about. I'm like, I don't know where he's going to be. I mean, is he still number 1? He hasn't played in a whole year. I mean,
yeah, but he is angry.
I was about to say.
Angry. And I will take that chip on his shoulder. What did it do for Steve Smith last season?
Yeah.
I will take that chip on his shoulder. I'm
avoiding AD like the plague, buddy. I don't want any.
You have a objection to starting him, or because?
No. I mean, I do avoid some guys that and Liz and I have had this discussion. I wouldn't draft Jameis Winston in fantasy football ever, and I probably won't draft any Bucs skill players because that will force me to cheer for Jameis Winston, and I don't want to do that ever.
So you and I had a talk about Ray Rice last year,
right
before the tape hit, and we were both right. Everybody apologized to us. But in terms of fantasy potential, I do think Adrian Peterson, whether you choose to draft him for moral reasons or not, and I totally respect your opinion, and I hope I don't get the first pick so I don't have to be in this moral quandary. But I think for me, he's my number 1 ranked running back, followed by Jamal Charles and Le'Veon Bell.
Wow, okay.
Interesting. Where does Eddie Lacy factor in?
Number 4. I have him number 4, Matt Forte number 5. And then it starts to get a bit messier. Marshawn Lynch is in there. CJ
I was about to say, what about beast mode? Where are we putting him, you think?
He's top 10 for sure. I have him a little bit higher than some other people because, I feel like everybody's waiting for him to fall apart, and I just don't see that happening yet. And so you can't. People are going to get hurt when they get hurt, right? Like players are going to smoke weed and get arrested and suspended for games too. And you can't project that. So he's still doing what he needs to do, and so for those reasons, I'm going to keep him in my. I think he's in my top 7.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's a question that I want to get your answer to, because as you know, I have a show with Zach Law, and I write about fantasy football, and I talk a lot about it. We've had this discussion to draft a quarterback high or not. A lot of fantasy football players will wait until the mid or later rounds to grab one, but there's some really crappy quarterbacks out there.
Mm-hmm.
That is true. I tend to like to wait a little bit. Now, I'm not necessarily. It's also you have to know your league, right? So if you're in a league where everybody drafts the best quarterbacks in the first round, then you have to adapt, right? And probably draft one higher than you might normally. I like to wait until like the 5 to 8 range round.
Okay.
Right now, so we talked about Odell Beckham Jr. and Victor Cruz coming back. Surprisingly, Eli Manning was a QB 10 in 2014. So that means he was a QB 1. He was totally startable, and his current ADP is 807. So he's going at the end of the 8th round. The weapons that he is going to have, Beckham Jr., Victor Cruz, and Shane Vereen, who's a great pass-catching back, and the Giants just acquired him in addition to Rashad Jennings, who's inevitably going to break down, but, whatever.
Right.
So I think the addition of Shane Vereen only makes Eli Manning's value that much better, and he's so cheap to wait till the 8th round to get him at the end of the 8th round. Like, sure, you want to go for Andrew Luck in the 4th round? Great. But then you're missing out on your wide receiver 2 or your RB2, depending on how you're drafting.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree, and a lot of it depends too, for me, on how deep the league is, and I agree that you have to know, but you're not always, unfortunately, given because for whatever reason, it seems like I've been in 2 startup dynasty leagues that have folded after 1 year in the past 3 or 4 years, and I hate that. I mean, I understand it happens and it's very common, but you put all that juice into it and you're like, and I won my one last year and then it folded.
But that's it. I mean, that's why I think in Dynasty you can't have that mentality of like building the dream team. You've got to win for this year, especially in startup. Because you never know. I mean, I'm in 2, and the buy-in was $70 a piece. Like, I'm gonna win this year because I want to see some of that investment return.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree with that too.
That's why I like to draft 2 quarterbacks. I like to draft, especially in Dynasty. I like to draft maybe a veteran guy, and like Joe Flacco, I think is interesting. A lot of people don't like him this year because Torrey Smith is now in San Francisco, so his receiving options are pretty depleted. Mark Trestman's going to find a guy in the draft. This NFL draft is wide receiver heavy.
Right.
I'm not worried about it. And knowing how much Mark Trestman likes to throw the ball, I think Joe Flacco's numbers could be really interesting. So I think drafting Joe Flacco like super late as a QB2 with QB1 potential is really interesting. And I'd rather do something like Carson Palmer is another guy. If he stays healthy, sure. But he's another guy that has a ton of value. So maybe Phillip Rivers is another guy with a ton of value. I don't want to buy in on Russell Wilson, who's right now, Andrew Luck, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. Those are your top 3 QBs, and they're all going like between the 2nd and 4th rounds, depending on the makeup of the league. I don't want to bet on Russell Wilson that high. I just don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather wait and Peyton Manning is dropping, so maybe Peyton Manning's only good for the first 9 weeks of the year, but then you've got Carson Palmer or Joe Flacco there
to
step in.
And Ryan Fitzpatrick, who while he's not the best NFL quarterback, he has a decent fantasy option.
I think he's more of a. I wouldn't draft Ryan Fitzpatrick. I think he's more of a bye-week plug-in.
A streamer.
Yeah, you could stream with him for sure, but you don't know what's going to emerge. And Geno Smith is, again, I'm not drafting this guy. He's for potential. He's got Chan Gailey, right? One of the best defensive minds. Yes, he's competing with your boy Ryan Fitzpatrick for the starting job, but Fitzpatrick could get hurt. He could lose out the job, and then think of the weapons that he has. And he never had a great offensive coach. Rex Ryan does not know how to develop a quarterback. That's been evidenced. So you've got this guy who's drafted in the first round, so he has some obvious talent, and now he can be worked with. He can work with one of the top offensive minds in the game in Chan Gailey, and he's got Brandon Marshall on the outside, Eric Decker are there as well. They just added Stephon Ridley, who's coming off of an ACL injury, but still, and Chris Ivory's not a chump, and Jason Morrow's developing at the tight end position. So I feel like all of a sudden this guy has real weapons and a real coach.
Yeah, you sound like a Jets fan.
And I'm not. And let's be clear here, Ryan Fitzpatrick is not my guy. I'm just thinking about guys who are there around in ADP purposes around Carson Palmer and Joe Flacco. I was actually kind of surprised that Joe Flacco his ADP is as low as it is, but I've probably done 12 fantasy mocks right now, and it's interesting to see who people avoid. And Ryan Fitzpatrick's down there, and Joe Flacco, and
Joe Flacco always seems to be on my league. The last 3 years, he has been in my league, and I just can't get. I don't know. I try not to, but somehow
you keep coming around. Yup.
So anyway, it's interesting, but related to that, I know that you're going to have to go here in a minute, Liz. The zero RB theory, are we still buying into that or not?
It's real hard to do. I mean, I tried it last year. I ran an experiment. Maybe it was the 2 RBs I picked because Ben Tate was one of them. So it didn't really work. I mean, I think that you've got, but by the way, so it is a good lesson because my 2 I forget who my RB1 was. I don't even remember. Oh, I think it was Eddie Lacy. I think I got Eddie Lacy and Ben Tate. So Ben Tate, obviously a wash. But then I ended up going to the semifinals in that league because I worked the waiver wire. So a draft isn't everything, right. Like it's a helpful thing, but and I think that to me is the lesson. So like, okay, whatever, I could hit a wide receiver. I could hit a wide receiver that or like Tyler Eifert last year, like his elbow got all crazy and he didn't play again. So that could be your guy, and then you're gonna have to make moves. But if you're staying educated each week, then the moves aren't as hard to make, and you can rebuild your team. I mean, that's what all good NFL teams do anyway. They're constantly moving pieces around. They're not – Bill Belichick's a great example, right? He was like, I don't have any love for Darrelle Revis. He's old. I'm going to shuttle him off and let him finish his career. I keep talking about the Jets. I don't know what's going on.
It's crazy. It is really crazy to think about Darrelle Revis back with the Jets. I mean, I feel like I'm – back in 2000 anyway. I mean, it's just weird.
It's also from a fantasy perspective to think about Darrelle Revis and Antonio Cromartie back at the Jets. That makes me less wary or more wary of like Patriots receivers or receivers within that division because they're gonna have to play those guys twice.
Exactly.
Yeah, and the Dolphins, their defense isn't nothing to sneeze at either. Brent Grimes and they've got some nice talent there too. Yeah.
So it's all connected. And I would say that in terms of to bring it back to RB2, I think I don't like to say value-based drafting because there's definitely the problem with the value-based drafting is that how are we setting these values? They're all based on last year for the most part, so they seem to be incongruent values. So I would like to draft best player available. And I do think loading up on running backs is a wise idea because of the scarcity at the position. And now that there have been, this last 2014 draft class was so chock full of awesome receivers, and this coming 2015 class also has a large receiver class as well. I think that you can find so much depth at that position as compared to the running back position that, I mean, we're talking redraft, not dynasty necessarily, that I would load up on running back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree that a successful strategy is, it definitely includes working that waiver wire. And then that's regardless of how well you do draft, because you're going to have injuries, and, you know, you're going to draft a guy or two who just doesn't turn out like you expected, dang it.
Right.
Yes. That gets you every time.
So last year we sort of saw, I don't want to say the rise of the rookie wide receiver, but it was a good year for some rookie wide receivers. You mentioned Odell Beckham Jr. We're going to see something similar this year. Which young wide receivers do you like in the draft and the second-year guys?
Well, I think that the top two guys that everyone is talking about who are expected to be drafted at the top of their class are Kevin White and Amari Cooper. I've seen Amari Cooper in a lot of professional mocks going to the Bears, so I like that. I try to fill those Brandon Marshall shoes like I alluded to earlier. Kevin White probably has the higher ceiling. He's considered the more ascendant talent, but he's also more raw. So it depends. For a while, it was thought that the Raiders were going to take Amari Cooper because he's a more polished receiver, could make more of an immediate impact. But now I'm hearing that they're really falling in love with White's potential. So, you know, every coach believes that he is able to, like, get every piece of goodness and develop talent, which we know isn't true, but we mentioned those egos before. They don't have that same self-awareness, perhaps. So, Kevin White, great in Dynasty. I like Amari Cooper more for redraft because I think he's able to, like, hit the field. His route running is crisp. He doesn't have the, like, I call it the Dante Moncrief problem, where you've got this athletic freak, but he can't run a route, and he's buried on the depth chart, and so teams want to win today, not in 3 years, you know? So I also like Dorial Beckham Green. Dorial Beckham Green. He's a crazy talent. Sharona, you're probably going to want to avoid him, and I understand why. He's got some, well, he allegedly assaulted a woman at his university. He's probably the most freakish talent, but he's going to be drafted later because there are some character concerns. I think under the right coaching staff, he could ascend, and it'll be interesting to see if he could get his stuff back on track, but I think he's another great talent. Devontae Parker would be the fourth guy to round out that crew of top 4 receivers. He has really good focus, but he's just not as dynamic as the other 3 guys.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who goes first, Kevin White or Amari Cooper. Some of the latest mocks and things that I've seen have the Raiders maybe taking a defensive player. I don't know. I don't know what. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the Raiders are going to do. I like Amari Cooper. He's a guy he's done it. He's done it consistently, and he did it in the toughest division in college football. You know, for that reason, I prefer him. It's always hard when you got that P word, that potential, because some guys can fulfill it and some guys can't. And you mentioned Dante Moncrief. You know, Cordero Patterson, another guy who had that P word and didn't run around, apparently. We're going to talk about the Vikings here in a minute.
When I look at the scouting reports and I try to think in fantasy, the thing that I always look for is, like, who are the best for immediate impact in fantasy, who are the best route runners? Because to me, you're hedging your bets then, because that's the polish. And maybe they're not as exciting players. I mean, there's a guy, I think Tyler Lockett, I believe, and he's a later round guy. He's a total film rat, watches a ton of film, really, really crisp route runner, very polished player. He's someone that I think that absolutely people should keep an eye on. Yep, Tyler Lockett out of Kansas State. But he's 5'10 and 182 pounds. So people are like, they look at his size and they're like, no, thank you, I don't know, but God, his game has such finesse. His combine numbers were stellar. He's got a ton of grit. So that's a guy that, like, I personally am rooting for and would probably sneakily draft with a late round flyer, because if we're talking potential, then, like, that's the kind of potential that I want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here it is. The Bears, what are they going to do? Who are they going to take? Who would you like to see them take?
I'd like to see them beef up their secondary. I know that we added Entree Roll at the safety position, so that's supposed to make us feel good. and you know, if Roll played as good as he runs his mouth, then maybe I'd feel better about things. He's a good player, a nice addition, not complaining. I think we need to complement Kyle Fuller at the cornerback position and draft another CB. I'd really like to see that. Our run defense was improved last year, and I do think Coach John Fox, who's obviously our new coach, a defensively minded coach, will know how to manipulate that side of the ball. So I also, you know, I liked Marquez Wilson, but I didn't see a ton out of him when he stepped in for Brandon Marshall towards the end of last season. He's a big wide receiver, but he did seem really raw. He had trouble catching the ball. And I don't know if that was just he didn't play a full season because he had broken his collarbone in training camp, so he wasn't even able to come off the IR until the second half of the season. Mm-hmm. So if he develops, but I just really feel like Ryan Pace and John Fox want to do their own thing, and he's part of the old regime, and so I've heard, like I said, that Amari Cooper would be added, and I think that's like I like Amari Cooper and Alshon Jeffrey. Heck yeah, that sounds great to me. Martellus Bennett still working the middle. Love that, and you know we already have Kadeem Carey in the backfield backing up Matt Forte, so I feel like I'd be surprised if they added another running back. If they do, I think it's just an ego thing, frankly, because they want their guy.
Right.
But I think the Bears specifically need to focus on their cornerbacks and their secondary.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good. Very
good.
As always, great stuff, Liz. Tell everybody again where they can find you out there writing about fantasy football and on Twitter, and give another plug to your excellent, excellent podcast.
Will do. Thank you so much, ladies. It's always fun. I could talk football with y'all forever. Let's see. You can find me on Twitter at @TheFFGirl. I also just joined Instagram, which is like, watch out, young people. I'm on that now. So I'm on that at all lowercase @TheFFGirl as well. The website is thefantasyfootballgirl.com, and my podcast is the X's and Y's podcast, available on iTunes.
Excellent.
Excellent. Thanks again. And I cannot believe Little Pumpkin is almost 2.
No. I can't believe I'm the mother of a 2-year-old and I'm on Instagram.
Well, we expect lots of baby pictures.
Exactly.
I posted one today. Thank you so much, ladies. Have a great day.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Bye.
All right. Virlisa, you're on the clock now. I'm so happy that you were able to join us because I really wanted to talk to you about Adrian Peterson. He's been reinstated. Haven't heard much out of either side since then. Are they kissing and making up behind the scenes?
You know, I hope so. I'm just to the point where, okay, yes, AP is reinstated. There's been so many rumors. He's being traded. He's going here.
He's not happy.
He wants $1 billion guaranteed. He wants all this money to make up for all the endorsements that he lost. Okay, give me a break. We just got him reinstated. He is under contract. Honestly, I don't think he's going anywhere. I really don't. I think after thinking about it and and just going over all these different scenarios, I think this is just my opinion. I think what he's going to do is he's going to stay with the Vikings, and he's going to play like he should, like a grown man should, because this is his job, is to play football, and he's going to do it in a way where he's going to play to get those endorsements back, to get people to believe in him and look at him as Adrian Peterson, the football player, not Adrian Peterson, the bad person that did whatever he did. That's how I'm looking at it now. Like I said, it's just my opinion, but that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. Will it happen? I don't know.
I completely agree. I think you're absolutely right. It would be in his best interest. I don't like to knock anybody, and I definitely don't like to hate on someone else's hustle, but I don't understand his agents.
No.
I don't understand this
I don't know
whole
where
thought
he was
process.
coming from with this.
Is this what an agent does? I mean, because if that's what they do, then okay, but this is some behavior. I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? Then the whole Bucks hat on the jersey. Who does that? I mean, how old are we? Are we grateful?
I was about to say, his agent is really stirring the pot, and that's just,
His agents lost other clients as a result. His agent used to represent Titans linebacker Derek Morgan, and he switched, and within a couple of weeks got his nice shiny new contract from the Titans. So, and there was someone else too. I forget It was another big name.
Wasn't it J.J. Watt? No. I think J.J. Watt had him as a co-agent. So
yes, he was a co-agent, and he kept the other agent, but dumped this guy.
Yes.
Yeah. There's been a few instances like that, and again, I don't like to hate on somebody else, but I didn't understand the strategy, and I don't know that it was a successful strategy. I think that it created issues that
didn't need to be.
Yeah.
How do you think he'll come back after this year? Do you think he'll be like he did after he shredded his knee?
Maybe, maybe he will. Just because right now people are so angry with him, and he's angry at the Vikings. It's just all this anger for what we don't know. It's just everyone seems. So I think he is. He's probably got this huge chip on his shoulder, and that's probably going to be the word of the week is this chip on his shoulder. He's going to play with the chip on his shoulder. If that's what he has to do, fine, go do that. But
I think if anybody can do it, it's Adrian Peterson.
Yes.
And I mentioned with Liz that I was avoiding him. It doesn't have anything to do. I have sympathy for Adrian Peterson's situation. I think that he was raised in the way that he was raised. I do think that he carried his actions too far with his children. And I hope that he does better there. I don't have any moral objections to. Although, if it came down to it, and if I saw him, and and if I saw, another guy that maybe doesn't have those things, I might weigh a little bit. I don't know, but I wouldn't have any objections to drafting him. I just have questions about whether, at his age, he can come back and be who he was.
If he's got to prove it now. I mean, he's got a lot to prove to the organization and to fans out there. Because what we've seen from him. I mean, regardless of what happened, what the whole incident. It's just his whole attitude right now is how he's acting towards the Vikings. He's uneasy. The Vikings had nothing to do with the whole situation. Why are you going to?
They didn't do anything.
And they stood behind him.
That was the craziest part about it, was how mad he is. I don't understand.
And we're, as a Viking fan, we're kind of taking it personal. Like, dude, we didn't do anything, and don't come, don't be uneasy with us. That's how a lot of us are feeling. We're to the point where we're like, just shut up. I mean, just shut up. In play football.
No, I mean, I could completely relate to that. I think if I were a Vikings fan, I would be all like, "Why are you mad at me? I didn't go beat my son." I mean, we didn't put that switch in your hand and make you hit him on his tushy and his little.
That's you. That is you. I mean, but now you're uneasy with playing for the Vikings.
What did he expect y'all to do? I mean, I don't understand what he expected y'all to do.
I don't know. I guess, bend over backwards like some other people would have done. I don't know, but there's nothing more we could have or should have done. But I think that's how we're feeling. We're just like, okay, if you want to play. And then, we don't want you to come back to the team saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to play. But then you only give us 50% of AP.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that would definitely not be in his best interest. But again, him running his mouth like he hasn't been in his best interest either, and he's been doing that too. So, does he have any trade value? Do you think?
No. You're 30 years old. You need to sit down and relax. And
not at that contract. I agree. Not at that contract. No teams, and he's not going to. I mean, obviously, he's crying about the endorsements that he's lost. He's not going to redo that deal.
No.
And so, yeah.
What you need to do, you need to play. You need to make us forget about all the stuff that has happened, and to do that, we need you to play at 120%, not 100, not 100, not 110, 120. To make us forget for all the bull crap that you have said in the off season. So that is what I'm telling. If he's listening, you do what I do.
Yeah.
Listen to
Virlisa. So in the draft is coming up. Thank God it's almost here.
I know.
Do you think they'll draft a running back, or will they maybe reunite Teddy Bridgewater with one Kevin White?
This year, it's hard to figure out, because in the past, I've been able to figure out what we need. We need this person, we need that person, and we got it. I was right. But this time around, I'm like, we have so many needs. We need this, we need that. I don't know what they're going to do. And plus, the Vikings, we always do something surprising at the draft. So I'm thinking, we're going to pick up Danny Shelton. So that's just me. Do we
I
need
like Danny Shelton. Yeah, I like Danny Shelton. Well, I mean, the bar's kind of low. At least if you turn in the pick, you're going to be doing okay, right?
Right.
I didn't mean to hit you with that, but you brought it up, and so,
Oh, that's
I
what
will
you're bad.
never forget. And then they almost did it again the next year, and I was like, what are you doing?
We get nervous because we're like, oh, crap, what do we do?
Just turn the card in. Just turn the card in.
Just sweat bullets. We're like the Vikings. Every year they do this to me.
I'm so sorry. I don't mean to laugh.
No, I'm going to be prepared for something like that and watch them not do anything. I'm going to be like, no, we're going to trade it like 3 times in the first round, and I'm this year. They're not going to fool me.
Well, no. You heard us talk a little bit about Cordarrelle. It's a big year for Mr. Cordarrelle Patterson. Mm-hmm. Cordarrelle, I just can't quit you. I keep drafting you in fantasy football. Drafting him in these mocks. He's dropped. I mean, it's such a good bargain. He's like, I'm getting him late in these rounds. People are avoiding him. You hit on, what is his name, Charles Johnson, the wide receiver? But Greg Jennings is now gone. You would think that at some point they're going to look for a wide receiver.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I don't know what Cordell's going to do. He needs to learn how to run routes. That's his problem. He's fast. He just doesn't know how to run routes. Everyone knows that. It's no secret. Yes, Mr. Patterson, flashy flash, does not know how to run routes.
Kind of key.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. What do you think? Was there a disconnect between him and the coaching staff? Did he think that he could get by on talent? What do you think was the problem there?
They seen that he was one fast individual, and maybe, they probably did know he couldn't run routes, but they thought, since you're a football player and you've been playing football for so many years, you could, learn. You do have the off season. Learn some, maybe not all, but some. But you didn't improve from your rookie year, so I don't know what they're gonna do with him. Maybe he'll just be like kick returns. That's the case, then I'm fine with it, because right now, if he hasn't learned by now, then I don't know.
Yeah, it's a concern. He came to Tennessee. He was only at Tennessee for 1 year. He came to Tennessee from JUCO. Mm-hmm. He was a guy who would have played college ball elsewhere, but could not get himself academically eligible and had to go that route. And I am absolutely not knocking Cordarrelle Patterson. These kids are not. They're shuffled through school. They're there to play football. They're not encouraged to get their education, and I seriously wonder if Cordero Patterson can read and write.
Okay, I thought the same thing. I don't think he can.
That's not funny.
I have been saying that for years. I don't think he can read. Honestly.
And I know that teams are going to these, the little tablet, iPad, whatever. But still, not having that fundamental aspect, I wonder if that affects him.
I have been saying that for my husband. I look at him like, I honestly don't think he can read. I mean, there should be no way why he can't understand his job. That is, if you're a wide receiver, wide receivers have to run routes. How do you not understand that? I honestly don't think he can read. I mean, it's like a drummer who can't read music. It's the same.
Yeah. Yeah, he came to Tennessee, he couldn't run routes there either, and they got by that 1 year. They had him, Justin Hunter, and Derek Rogers for 4 games, 2 or 3 games, 4 games, something like that. Maybe not even that much. I can't remember. I know he was in that mix. But anyway, Tennessee got by largely by just putting him on the field, and I don't want to say that they played backyard football, but they had Tyler Bray and Rajon Neal, who's now with the Green Bay Packers. They had some nice talent on that team, and they just got in the ball. And because he is such a fantastic athlete, he was able to do stuff with it. So, yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting. What are the expectations? Teddy Bridgewater.
You read my mind. I was just about to ask about Teddy Bridgewater.
You ask it then. Go ahead.
So, what do you expect for Teddy Bridgewater? Do you think he's going to take that next step as the Vikings quarterback? What do you think?
I only expect big things from my Teddy B. That's what I expect. Big things to happen from Teddy B. He had a tremendous year last year. I think he came up with
He did well.
He did well for what we had. What we had, he did well. I mean, look at the circumstances. I mean, Castle gets hurt, and you're thrown in to play in the big boys league with the O-line that we had. Come on now.
Exactly.
They were a suspect. I don't know what was going on with Khalil, but whatever. But he did a fantastic job. He handled himself very well, and that's what I like. He handled himself like a quarterback should. So I'm happy with what I did last year, and I'm only expecting the best. So whatever he did, I'm expecting more and him to grow. He doesn't have Greg Jennings on his side, and that I will miss because them two had some type of wide receiver quarterback connection.
Right.
Whether, or a father-son connection. I don't know what it is, but
there was some kind of connection.
Great guy.
And
Greg's a great guy. And
so I don't know. Mike Wallace. I don't know if he can be like Greg Jennings was to Teddy B.
Probably not. I mean, I hate to put it so bluntly, but probably not.
I know, but we'll see. We'll see.
I wonder about that. I wonder about adding Mike Wallace to that mix. I mean, I suppose that it was a low risk move, and I feel confident that Norv Turner and Mike Zimmer have both sat Mike Wallace down and said there'll be no sock puppets in the locker room, and I don't know. In the interviews, and you know what I'm talking about, but.
But you need to grow up, act your age and not your shoe size. Is that how the saying goes? Act your age, not your shoe size. That's what I want to see from Mike Wallace. Act your age. How old is he? What, 20-something?
28.
Yeah.
Yes.
Old enough to know better. Old enough to know better.
It's interesting, Virlisa, that you were talking about how well Teddy Bridgewater handled things and carried himself, and how great he was. It will forever and ever stick out in my mind that stupid narrative that he couldn't be a franchise quarterback because he was not Johnny Manziel, basically. And here we are, who's out there shining away and who is not.
Whose star has dulled.
Johnny Manziel did finish his treatment, you guys. So big.
I'm pulling for Johnny
Manziel.
Big
I'm pulling for Johnny Manziel.
I never did like Johnny Manziel. I never, ever liked him. I'm sorry. I was like, his attitude, what he does, how he presented himself at the draft. I was like, y'all can have him. He does not.
I agree. I agree. I agree. I'm pulling for him because he had the wherewithal to put himself into rehab and get help and everything. No, I completely agree, and that's why that narrative just pissed me off so greatly. And I hope that people are seeing it for as dumb then as it is now. But we're still seeing it with Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're still seeing it. I don't know where those silly things come from, but we certainly do everything that we can to try to
avoid
all that. All right. We got to talk about this week's hot topic because I'm just like
say
whatever.
What?
Okay. So Chip Kelly, in addition to trading LaShawn McCoy and all the other crazy stuff that he did during the offseason, has now voluntarily, without anybody really pushing him to, signed Tim Tebow.
Okay, so this is the same Tim Tebow that played 3 years ago.
Yeah,
and was on the SEC network and out there doing red carpets.
Yeah. Okay. So Chip is crazy.
But let's not forget he did win a playoff game. He did win a playoff game.
He's crazy.
Who started? Do we remember who started that playoff game? Was it? I can't remember. Was it Nick Foles? It was Mark Sanchez, right?
Sanchez. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about Tim Tebow. He did win a playoff game for Denver.
Denver, yes.
That was 20 million years ago. I mean,
did you guys see what Jay Feely said today?
Yeah, what did he say?
He said that Tim Tebow once threw 28 passes without completing a single one of them against a defense that was not rushing, that wasn't a defense that wasn't defensing.
A defense that forgot how to defense. And he had what? What'd you say? 28 incomplete?
28 incomplete. I was like, and I didn't go back and look at it because if it wasn't for this show, I wouldn't be talking about Tim Tebow. But here we are.
I don't know.
Chip Kelly, really.
Really.
How many quarterbacks is on the Eagles team now? Is it 10?
I know, right?
Exactly.
Allegedly, he's there for short yardage situations. How crazy is that? I don't think he's going to make the roster. He's just he's there to, I don't know.
Hype circus.
He's camp bait. Maybe he's there to get the media. Maybe Chip Kelly's out there doing something with somebody or something.
I don't know.
I think Tim Tebow's just there to deflect media attention from somebody.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they need...
He's traded everybody. There's nobody left to get media attention.
LaShawn McCoy said that Chip Kelly did not appreciate stars, that he didn't like stars. Well, he just signed a guy who, whether you agree or not, I mean, he's charismatic and he's been all over your TVs and stuff. He's the definition of a star, whether he's a good football player or not.
Exactly.
He's a celebrity, a terrible football player.
So.
I don't know. He's got a face for the TV screen, so, maybe he could be an actor. Because I don't really think he's a good analyst. I hear him and I'm like, oh, turn the channel.
He definitely has the looks and and whatnot. I thought some of what he did was good, and some of it was okay. Okay. But, I mean, he's what they look for, somebody who's, attractive, and they think that will appeal and draw in that audience.
I don't know, it's Tim Tebow. I when I seen that, I was just like, he's sniffing something. Like,
yes, exactly.
On some stuff.
So the big schedule release was tonight. Were you guys like on the edge of your couch watching the schedule release?
Actually, I was not. My daughter was reading a book to me, and so we were listening to that. And then I was like, "Oh, wait! I guess the schedule came." So I took a peek at it, and we start 3 of the 4 games on the road. Yeah,
that's tough.
That's very tough. And then I think out of our last 4, again, 3 of the last 4 games are on the road. So got a lot of road games. Well, I mean, we do. I mean, you always have 8, but they come in bunches. They come in
the way
bunches.
It's stacked up. Yeah.
Exactly.
I saw where the Patriots only play 4 teams that made the playoffs last year. No shenanigans there, eh?
None.
Virlisa, did you look at the Vikings schedule? Are you happy with it?
We play the 49ers on a Monday night game, so yeah, that's going to be...
That's going to be interesting.
That will be I'm so anxious to see what the 49ers are going to look like this year.
I know,
right?
We listened to Liz talk about, and I owned Carlos Hyde all over the place last year. I mean, I had him on like 3 fantasy teams, and I agree that he's got great potential and whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I avoided Vernon Davis. I was avoiding all San Francisco 49ers players.
So was I.
Yeah, I don't know. They make me nervous because Lord knows, God bless their new coach, Tomasula, I think is his name. But who? What are you gonna do? I mean, I don't even know if he knows how to coach, and I hate to say that, but I don't know. I
don't know.
I definitely wish him well, and I hope that the 49ers rebound. And I know that you weren't. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't saying that you weren't, but I said that was my bless his little heart before I said I just really don't understand the hire and anything that went down with the 49ers last year.
Right. Well, I guess that's what we play Monday night, first game away. So we'll see how that goes.
Can the Seahawks make it back to in that division? Make it back to the Super Bowl?
Definitely not.
I gotta look at their schedule and see. I know we play them. The Lions play them. That's their they play them like the beginning of the season, October 5th-ish or something like that. But
December. It's going to be absolutely cold.
Do you have them home or away?
It's a home game. So,
home game?
Yeah.
Okay. That'll be interesting. I got to look at their schedule and see, but I don't know. As of now, until anybody proves them differently, I do think that they will still be, I think they win the NFC until somebody proves differently.
I don't see it happening. Why? I can't give you an explanation. It's maybe because I'm hating right now, but
I'm not hating. I'm just saying. I think until they are proven differently, and of course at this time of year we don't know anything. We don't know drafts, anything like that. So they're the defending champs. And she has haterade.
We'll see. I kind of like the Packers odds this year.
Again, I think that if there is a challenger, I think it could be them. I really do. I mean,
of course. I hate to say it, but fine. Yeah.
I know, right? You hate to say it. I respect them, but I could see.
Did you see that they're going to retire Brett Favre's number?
Yeah,
it looks like. Speaking of kissing and making up, see, it can happen.
They
have reconciled in Packerland. And, you know, did you, Virlisa, did you enjoy having Brett Favre for that 1 year?
2 years.
Oh, was it 2 years? Okay. Sorry, 2 years.
It was fabulous. He was, you know, he was old enough to be a half of those players, you know, father or grandpa, but he did good. He enjoyed himself. He was very respectful, and, you know, I enjoyed it. I didn't, you know, I don't understand why we had to fly him on a jet or anything like that, but I don't know. But I enjoyed having Favre here. Maybe we can retire his number in Minnesota. We'll see. I don't know.
I don't think Packers fans would like that too much.
Probably not. Hopefully one day they'll be retiring Teddy Bridgewater's number, though.
Yes.
That's what honestly, I do have the Vikings in my rear view and just kind of keeping an eye on them because seriously, I think that, you know, Teddy Bridgewater, if he gets going, if they draft some decent receivers, yikes.
Yeah.
And that O-line gets it together.
And if AP comes back and with that chip on his shoulder and he's had a year off, so, you know, what if?
He'll be back. He'll be back. He just needs to come back and keep his mouth closed and play football. You're a football player, Adrian. That's what you do. Play football.
And maybe duct tape his agent's mouth for a little while, too.
Fire him. Jeez, can we start a petition to fire AP's agent? Terrible.
Possibly.
All right, well, it always goes by so fast, and here we are again, another hour in the books.
Woohoo! Well, thank you guys. Well, thank you, Virlisa, for joining us. And Liz, thank you for coming on earlier to talk fantasy. We appreciate it, as always. Got some good tips for my teams next year. So, Virlisa, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
You can find me in Twitterland under The Real Miss Lane, or you can find my articles at thenfl.com under the
NFLfemale.com.
Oh, my God.
NFLfemale.com.
I'm sick. Sorry, guys. NFL Female. Wow.
We should totally be on NFL.com. But
maybe that's why I'm like, they should give us a holler because, or ESPN. Did you guys hear about that Britt McHenry? What did she do? About her yelling at the toll person?
Toll booth, baby girl?
Oh, yeah. Poor girl.
Full mean girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's bad.
Well, yes, they should link to us. But anyways, that's another story for another day. But we know that Roger listens to the show, so he'll get a little taste of that, I'm sure. And so, like I said earlier, I am Sonja. I am the official fan reporter for the Detroit Lions. You can find me on Twitter at mom, 2, 3, RN. You can always find my articles on NFLfemale.com. I also write for A Good Sports Hang, where we talk any and all types of sports, so make sure you check that out. Check out Going Green with me and Vier. Yeah, so find me anywhere.
Yeah, we had Vier on the show last week. Great show with him. Shout out to Vier for joining us last week. And Virlisa, thank you, and thanks to Liz Loza. I am Sharona. You can follow me on Twitter. Excuse me, at Sports by Sharona. Check out my show in the morning, Sharona Unfiltered. Check out my show on Friday, Game Over with Vashti and Sharona. And you can find me writing about the NFL for NFL Female. Be sure to jump on our website, www.nflfemale.com, and check out the third and short podcast that we're doing with Dana O'Gorman, who is speaking of the Seattle Seahawks, our Seattle Seahawks OFR. Check those out. And thank you and shout out to Liz.
As always,
for whom none of this would be possible. Have a very pleasant evening. We'll be back next week with another great episode. You've been tuned in to the Zone Blitz by NFL Female.
Yes,
Later.